This week, attackers are found infecting iPhones for nearly 2 years. Google throws a bug bounty bucks at mega-popular third-party apps, how Jack Dorsey's Twitter account got hacked, and how attackers are exploiting vulnerable WordPress even plugins to backdoor sites. In the expert commentary this week, Larry Alston of Tufin joins us to discuss developing and enforcing security policies in the cloud. All that and more on this episode of Hack Naked News. This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show that brings you the security news each week. And despite popular belief, we do wear pants. It's Hack Naked News. Let the team at Black Hills Information Security test your defenses. With over 10 years of experience in penetration testing, red teaming, and threat hunting, the testers at Black Hills will help you find the holes in your security before the bad guys do. The team at Black Hills cares about educating and sharing their knowledge by creating countless blogs, open source tools, and webcasts for you to learn more about the tradecraft of pen testing and red teaming. Visit securityweekly.com/BHIS to join their mailing list and view the latest blogs and webcasts from Black Hills Information Security. Too many alerts and not enough action? It's time to get SaltStack. SaltStack is an intelligent IT automation platform that detects security issues in critical business systems and then actually fixes them. With SaltStack, security and IT teams work together to define custom security policies with certified checks for CIS, DISA-STIGs, and more. You can scan systems for millions of compliance checks in minutes. Remediate compliance and vulnerability issues with powerful automation, all in a single platform. Visit securityweekly.com/SaltStack to learn more. Welcome to Hack Naked News. It's episode 232 for August 3rd, 2019. I'm, of course, your host, Paul Asadorian. We have exciting news about the Security Weekly webcast program. We're partnered with ISC Squared as an official CPE provider. If you attended any of our webcasts or would like to attend one of our webcasts, you will be receiving 1 CPE credit per webcast. Register for the upcoming webcast with Logarithm featuring Stephen Smith and Jeff Brocher of the Logarithm team and Extra Hop as well. Make sure you go to securityweekly.com/webcast to register for our upcoming ones and securityweekly.com/on-demand to catch the archive. And now, the security news. Armed with iOS 0 days, that's multiple iOS 0 days, hackers were indiscriminately infecting iPhones for nearly 2 years. This is actually kind of amazing. The 14 vulnerabilities were discovered in this campaign, comprised 7 flaws in the WebKit package used by Safari. 5 bugs were in the iOS kernel, and 2 flaws that escaped a browser sandbox that attempts to keep untrusted code from interacting with sensitive parts of the operating system. At least 1 of the 5 change was still in a 0 day when Project Zero Day discovered it earlier this year. Google researchers reported those flaws to Apple on February 1st of this year with a 7-day deadline, and Apple fixed them in 6 days. And a quote from the article says, "It feels like the amount of effort that went into the exploits is significant." This entire campaign was pretty massive, says Charles Holmes, a managing principal and research consultant who focuses primarily on mobile security at Atreides Partners. Charles says maintaining capabilities off of the last 3 years of iOS and a combination of hardware devices and firmware, a lot of time and effort went into that. He says his gut feels like there was some nation state behind maintaining that capability. I tend to agree with Charles on that point. Google throws bug bounty bucks at mega popular third-party apps. Really what they're playing on is apps that have a certain number of downloads. So in a post from the Android security and privacy teams, Adam Backus and Sebastian Porce and Patrick Muchler representing the company said that it's throwing security net over not just its own apps, but over all third-party apps that have more than 100 million installs. This opens the door for security researchers to help hundreds of organizations and identify and fix vulnerabilities in their apps. Now, if the developers of the app that have an existing bug bounty program, researchers can essentially double dip and collect rewards directly from the top of the rewards from Google, in addition to the ones that the developers have started their own bug bounty or vulnerability disclosure program that offers a reward. So it's pretty cool. Google getting a little more serious about applying security to the apps on the Android platform. This next story, how MuleSoft patched a critical security flaw and avoided a disaster. And I'm happy to report that this went in a positive direction. Sometimes we talk about disclosure that goes south. This is a snippet of a serious vulnerability disclosure. And even though it required extra work from customers, the way MuleSoft handled it was really awesome, and everyone was appreciative, even though they had to do some extra work to remediate a vulnerability. Now, everyone running an on-site Mule engine or API gateway where this flaw was found was getting a call to check if they received and read the email that provided extensive details about the vulnerability. One of the customers, Sarid, said that MuleSoft had taken an unprecedented step of seeking out and talking to each of the company's security and DevOps departments, not just secretaries or sales representatives. They went to the people who were responsible for maintaining the code. They were taking this flaw very seriously, according to reports. They wanted to the message to reach the right person in each organization and make sure companies installed the patches. But they didn't stop there. MuleSoft also scheduled a second wave of calls after companies had installed the patches, verifying that customers followed through and passing on additional mitigation advice. So good job, MuleSoft. Jack Dorsey's Twitter account got hacked. He's the CEO currently of Twitter. Some insights into what happened, according to multiple reports. This is what I heard as well. A Twitter user pointed out that the source of all the unauthorized tweets going to Jack Dorsey's account was, in fact, from CloudHopper, which Twitter acquired in 2010. CloudHopper allowed users to send out tweets using SMS messages. It's unclear if the hackers breached the old CloudHopper infrastructure or if they SIM swapped Dorsey's real phone number to interact with his account via SMS. Attackers are exploiting vulnerable WordPress plugins. Go figure. This campaign has been around targeting a number of known vulnerabilities for some time, and vulnerabilities are added to the list of targets they discovered. This came from the folks at WordFence. Of particular note, a recently disclosed flaw in Bold Page Builder plugin on August 23rd, Nintech released a warning that a vulnerability had been discovered in the plugin and had been under attack since the previous day. WordFence's firewalls and built-in cross-site scripting protections detected these attacks against this vulnerability as early as August 20th. And they've got a really nice write-up that you should read about all the vulnerable plugins and associated vulnerabilities in those plugins. USBAnywhere bugs open Supermicro servers to remote attacks. Authentication vulnerabilities in the baseboard management controllers, BMCs, of Supermicro X9 through X11 servers, not to be confused with X of Unix fame, but Supermicro servers have been discovered that allow remote attackers to easily connect to a server and mount any virtual USB device of their choosing. The bugs are collectively dubbed USBAnywhere and allow attackers to obtain credentials for the BMCs. Once obtained, an attacker can then perform a range of USB attacks against the server remotely, including data exfiltration, booting from untrusted operating systems or images, or direct manipulation of the system via a virtual keyboard and mouse. According to researchers at Eclipsium, and we did an interview with them at Black Hat this year, great bunch of folks over there doing awesome research. Meet Domen, a new and sophisticated social engineering toolkit, though to me it sounded much like clickjacking. The basic premise is to compromise a website, usually WordPress, go figure, and use that to display an overlay, loaded as an iframe, on the visitors' VI Domensters screens. That was a term dubbed by the article. Basically an iframe that entices them visitors to install an update that really downloads a NetSupport remote access Trojan. It is very similar to the fake updates campaign described in April of 2018. This campaign also has some similarities to EI Test and other social engineering schemes reported in January 2017. In that instance, the malware payload was an ad fraud malware known as FleerCivet. Who names these things? But the campaign was later observed spreading the Spora ransomware. We'll take a short break and come back with expert commentary from Larry Alston of Tufin. Stay tuned. The question is simple. Have any of the systems on my network been compromised? The answer is harder than it should be. Enter AI Hunter. Active Countermeasures has automated and streamlined techniques used by the best pen testers and threat hunters in the industry to create AI Hunter, a network threat hunting solution that does the first pass of a hunt for you to identify systems that are most likely to be compromised and scores the results on a scale from 0 to 100. You can then research those systems in depth with AI Hunter. Focus your valuable time on the systems that need your expertise with AI Hunter. Sign up for a personal demo today at securityweekly.com/ACM. Welcome back to Hack Naked News. We welcome Larry Alston. He's the GM of Cloud at Tufin. We're talking about developing and enforcing security policies in the cloud. Larry, welcome to the program.
Good to be with you.
Good to have you. This is a common problem, even in the generic sense that we kind of are presenting this, right? There's so many different aspects of cloud where essentially traditional methods of security really don't work anymore, and it comes down to being able to configure and enforce policy in the cloud. So, Larry, tell us a little bit about this problem and how folks can use Tufin and other similar kinds of methods and procedures to remediate this issue.
Sure. So I guess at Tufin, we've been doing security policy management on-prem across firewalls and network gear for 14 years. And Tufin recognized that in the cloud, and specifically cloud-native applications, there was a very different challenge. And the challenge starts with the business imperative of why enterprises are going to the cloud to begin with. It's one thing to lift and shift and go into the cloud and extend your data center or move things that look like they're running in your data center up into the cloud in the typical lift and shift manner. It's another thing. And you can gain costs by doing that and get cost benefits from doing that. But the real win in moving to the cloud and having a cloud-first approach to business going forward and transform it and doing a digital transformation that exploits all the benefits of the cloud is to ensure that you're building applications that are what people call cloud native, taking advantage of cloud services that exist out there, taking advantage of the platform services that exist, not only for security, but for data, for AI, whatever it may be, and also rebuilding or building your applitions in a way that allows you to deploy applications much more quickly, react to the changes in customer demand, which drives your ability to respond to the markets, capitalize on market opportunities, and drive customer success. And so in that context, people are building cloud-native applications using microservices, deploying Kubernetes containers, they're using cloud-based services. But as in every major compute platform change that's ever happened in our industry in the past, that never happens in a green field. So you're also talking back to systems that live on-prem or live in data center, et cetera, et cetera. And so when you start thinking about the challenges of dealing with cloud native, you start dealing with the issues of how do you deal with the complexity of the different things that are what's talking to what or who's talking to whom.
Right. It's interesting, Larry, how when you put it in that context, how I think about when we used to rack servers in the data center. And then if you just fast forward and you're like, well, I'm deploying everything serverless now, how much has changed in that migration? I mean, pretty much like everything, right? And security has to change as well.
Yeah, it really is an amazing transformation. And I think that the processes that were used on-prem in a very locked down and very conservative environment, where you could touch the boxes where applications were running or serverless functions were running, where you knew the IP address of those boxes, you knew what subnet they were on, et cetera, et cetera. That doesn't exist in the cloud, especially with cloud-native applications, right? Where people are building applications using microservices, deploying them in Kubernetes. Those Kubernetes applications are talking to Postgres databases, tree buckets, Lambda functions, all sorts of things, as well as reaching back in the back end over a series of firewalls. And so how do you lock that system down? And interestingly enough, the first thing we see with our clients is hey, we'll just put a firewall in front of everything, firewall around the perimeter, and we're all set, and we're locked down. And what we've learned and what you see in a lot of the high visibility breaches is there's usually multiple reasons for a high visibility breach, but one of them more often than not, is configuration problems of all sorts, but specifically security configuration problems. And one of the reasons that's happening is there are a number of different things that go on when you build a cloud-native application that developers, quite frankly, are in charge of. So it's not uncommon for us. We're in early access for our Orc and Iris products, which I'll talk about in a minute. It's not uncommon for us to see a typical environment where there's 10 or 20 Kubernetes clusters, they 80 nodes, they have hundreds of microservices, there's 15 cloud accounts, there's 1,000 public services that they may be plugging into and out of, and the cloud native controls that wrap around it, like security groups and IAM policies and load balancers. All of those things are talking to one another. And if you think about just one application that may have 15 microservices, which represent 210 connections, if they all talk to one another, that's 200 connections right there. If they were talking to 6 external resources, and external maybe outside the Kubernetes cluster, public cloud, or maybe something that's on-prem, you're talking about 1,200, 1,300 possible connections just for one application.
Yeah, right? And I think that's where people really struggle is in those two basic areas of that. Before, I think were pretty basic, right? What can talk to what on what port or what service in this case, right?
Exactly.
And then if it can reach there, how does it authenticate to it, right? And now there's not humans that are authenticating. All these little components in the cloud, at some point, most of them have to authenticate to each other. And now you have to manage all that policy as you described. And we can't do that without tools and automation today. We just can't.
And the numbers are mind-blowing, right? And the number of configuration files that are involved. There's a configuration file for Kubernetes, the cluster. There's a configuration file for the application. There's a configuration file for the cloud account that you have, right? There's, if you're using mesh technologies like Istio, there's a configuration file for that. And it goes on and on. And if you want to leverage the best of those cloud platforms and use some of that technology, and then you add on AI policies and security groups, et cetera, there's a number of configuration files that are involved in actually just configuring this one application, number one. And number two is who's actually got control of those application configuration files.
Right. It's developers largely, correct?
It's the developers, right? The developers whose primary mission in life is to build applications quickly, iterate on them quickly, and respond to changes quickly, because that's what they're rewarded for, right?
Yeah,
They're not interested in being slowed down by a security team that needs to do a 3-week review. Opening up a certain port or a certain channel to get at something. These applications are iterating very, very quickly, and those developers have all the control over that. And so the second problem, besides the complexity of what talks to what and whom, quite frankly, if you don't have a handle on that, you don't have automation about that, how are you ever going to reduce your attack surface? Right? How are you ever going to do microsegmentation? You have to have some kind of visibility into it, and you need to be able to manage it. And then you have to be able to naturally integrate with what developers are doing today on behalf of the business, by the way. The business is taking a cloud-first approach. If you don't want to get in the way of business innovation, you have to figure out what tools to use, what processes do you need to integrate with to ensure that developers can do what they do best, which is build applications, iterate on them quickly, but also can take some responsibility for the kinds of security that's required in their domain.
And I think what's scary for security is largely we've lost a lot of that visibility and control, right? Because developers used to have to come to an administrator of some kind and say, hey, I need a new server, I need a new VM, I need a new operating system, I need a new app server. And we'd build that for them. That was actually one of my jobs, early 2000s, was building that infrastructure.
Absolutely.
And then they have to go to the security person and say, well, now I need this new thing to talk to this other thing and talk to this database and talk to this app. And security would be, with the paper and reviewing it, putting the check and go make the firewall changes. Now that all lives in configuration files, and developers are pushing a button and it's going building their infrastructure and making all those connections. And what I like about solutions like Tufin is it gives security people back some of that control and visibility, actually much of that control and visibility, because now I can say, great, you can go do your thing. But if you run into this particular scenario and you're trying to build it this way, you get to decide what happens. Does it stop the build? Does it notify? Who does it notify? And that's just the way we're going to do business and security today, right?
Exactly. And so our cloud native products at Tufin are designed to first to help accelerate the digital transformation people have already started, but do it in a secure way. And give security a tool to work with both DevOps and development teams that ensures there's guardrails, and it integrates into their CI/CD processes that they have in place today, so that developers are notified early and often when they're outside the policy that's been defined by the business. And a very different mindset, and it's a very different approach than opening tickets and waiting for these security reviews on the back end. Does this mean that security is going to be taken over by developers? No. Developers, that's not where their expertise is. That's not what they're being really paid to do. But they need to have tools that don't get in their way, or get in their way in a minimalist way. And so our cloud security products, Orca and Iris, or cloud native security products, are designed across both public cloud resources as well as containerized based applications on all the major platforms.
Right.
And as you said, the very first thing is visibility. It's not uncommon for us. We're in early access right now, and we have many customers that are traditional Tufin customers who are using our products. And it's not uncommon for the very first conversation we have with them, and the very first thing they do with our product is gain that visibility. What's talking to what? Who's talking to whom? And you should see the looks on people's faces when they see what's going on inside just a single Kubernetes cluster, for instance.
Right. Even the basic question, what services are exposed to the internet and which ones are not? In today's environments, that's a super important question, right? And it's from a risk equation, super important, but a difficult question to answer if you don't have the right tools.
It's very, very difficult, right? And some people think that, all right, we'll put things in security groups, we'll manage those security groups, we'll have namespaces, and then when they see, what's talking to what, and who's talking to whom, there's a visceral reaction, like, oh, we have to get our hands around this. And so our tools are designed to help them first and foremost understand this cloud security posture from a policy perspective, and then start asserting what those policies should be over time, right? And when they start asserting them, that's when they start understanding how they measure up to CIS benchmarks, other best practices in the cloud. Then they can start reporting on those things. And then ultimately they start asserting the policies themselves. And that's when the tools are integrated into the CI/CD pipeline. Developers start learning what they did wrong almost immediately when they check in the code and it runs. They're alerted, hey, you're outside this policy. We don't stop the build. We don't stop it even from the push to production unless they tell us to stop it. What we do is we raise a flag. We say you're outside, and developers can take the responsibility for fixing what they've been told about it, or not. But it's not. It's a different role, and it's a different way of alerting what's going on. But it gives everybody the visibility that they need to start moving down a path where they can start reducing the attack surface on a very, very complicated set of connections. You don't want those 1,200 connections all open. But by default, they could be, and you would never know, right?
Yeah, because if some of your services are exposed, even just in that one scenario, to the internet, it's likely some of them less than 24 hours, less than 12 hours, an attacker is going to find it, and they're going to upload a malicious container, they're going to do ransomware, they're going to launch denial of service attacks. So, you got to start thinking about different classes and applying policies to them. Sometimes you may stop a build and go, look, if you deploy this in like less than 12 hours, someone's going to find it and we're going to get hacked. It's going to be bad. So you got to fix that. You can't deploy it like that, right? But all these tools give us that luxury.
The whole application can't be exposed. All 1,200 can't be exposed, right? So how do you segment inside that application, and what policies do you use? At the business level, it's natural to say, hey, things that the finance department can look at shouldn't be something that developers should look at, and vice versa. But when you start putting these systems together and you think about the potential of intermixing them based on people intermix containers in clusters, et cetera, it's a very real problem.
Absolutely.
Problem that really can't be solved unless you automate it. Because if you think that having hundreds of firewalls with thousands of rules and a bunch of networks was complicated, wait until you start looking at this problem. Right. So
absolutely.
that's the problem we're setting out to solve.
And thank you, Larry, so much. And you can find more information about Tufin and view all of the segments that Tufin has done with us here at Security Weekly by going to securityweekly.com/Tufin. And there's a link on there where you can register and get more information from the fine folks at Tufin. Larry, thank you so much.
Thank you.
With that will conclude the show. Thanks, everyone, for listening and watching. We'll see you next time.